Welcome back. In the first video, we looked at bias, the direction attention tends to move first. Bias tells us what kind of information a person is most likely to prioritize. Amplitude tells us something different. Amplitude describes intensity, how strongly a trait is experienced or expressed. Together, bias and amplitude form the first two dimensions of the biased amplitude model. Bias exists along a cognitive spectrum. At one end is the autistic neurotype, which tends to prioritize systems, patterns, objects, details, and internal consistency. At the other end is the social neurotype, which tends to prioritize relationships, social information, group dynamics, and interpersonal meaning. Between them is the general distribution neurotype, which can draw from both forms of processing. A person's location along this spectrum represents their underlying cognitive orientation. But bias alone does not explain how strongly a person experiences their traits. For that, we add a second dimension, amplitude. Bias runs horizontally across the model. Amplitude moves vertically. A person's bias may remain relatively anchored, while their current amplitude can rise or fall. Amplitude is not fixed. The same person can experience low, medium, or high amplitude at different times. Their underlying cognitive bias has not changed. What changes is the intensity of the signal. Amplitude may shift from moment to moment, hour to hour, or day to day. Amplitude is the intensity of a trait, not its direction. It describes how strongly that trait appears in a person's thoughts, emotions, behavior, communication, and sensory experience. At low amplitude, the trait is present, but easier to manage or regulate. At high amplitude, the same trait may feel much stronger, more urgent, or more difficult to regulate. High amplitude does not mean more autistic, more social, or more disordered. It simply means that the trait is currently being experienced at greater intensity. Think of amplitude like the volume of a signal. The signal itself stays the same. At low amplitude, it is quiet. At medium amplitude, it becomes more noticeable. At high amplitude, it may dominate the person's attention or experience. The signal has not changed direction, only the volume has changed. So what turns the amplitude knob? Many different factors can raise or lower intensity. Some are internal, some come from the environment, some are temporary, and some may interact with one another. Rest, sleep, support, medication, and a calm environment may lower amplitude. Stress, pain, illness, sensory overload, heavy demands, or certain substances may raise it. These effects are not identical for every person. A medication that lowers one form of amplitude may raise another. A stimulating environment may help one person regulate while overwhelming someone else. Amplitude must always be understood in relation to the individual, their current state, and their environment. When we return to the full model, we can now plot two separate things. The horizontal axis shows cognitive bias. The vertical axis shows current amplitude. A person may remain in roughly the same bias position while moving upward or downward in amplitude. This helps explain why the same person may appear very different under different conditions without becoming a different neurotype. But intensity does not act alone. The next part of the model is load. Load describes the demands being placed on the nervous system. When load exceeds a person's current capacity, the system may become dysregulated. That may appear as overload, meltdown, shutdown, or loss of regulation. In the next video, we will examine load and what happens when demand exceeds capacity. The bias amplitude model is explored further in my book, Rise of Atlantis, available now at Barnes & Noble's. Because different isn't broken.